city lights, driving emotions. I hear the end of the road. I need to find a way to bring me back to you. Been up all night till I can reach you. All of these faces and places, they feel too much. I just need your touch. Let's run from the crowd. The world is too loud tonight. Can we just try to find a place to hide? Don't say goodbye, 'cause you and I might never have tomorrow. So let's stay forever tonight.
There you go.
Amazing. Sweet.
Bit of a journey, that one.
Yeah.
So obviously, looking at big picture stuff, there's a lot of nods to like my youth, which is Boys to Men and the early like Whitney, late Whitney, and just some of that more like Luther Vandross, those power ballads. The drum productions kind of like definitely floating around that late 80s gated verb snares, and but with a modern kind of take on it, with the synth sounds that are layered into those classic key sounds, and then obviously the vocal production and some vocoders, and that bridge is particularly modern. There's something super classic and about the outro, and yeah, so there's like a lot of my youth nods to my upbringing in that song.
What was the songwriting process like for this one?
We started with a session up in Auckland, and just with a really basic version of those keys.
Yeah.
But we had to finish early because I was feeling quite sick that day, so we'd only really kind of written like probably 10% of it, and then we just left it there for ages. And then I started playing around with the production and fleshing out some of the ideas. And then I was like, man, we've got to finish the song, Lepani. And so I flew him down to here to stay with me, and we spent a day writing and recording the rest of it. And then once he'd done all his vocals, I spent probably another like a few days on it with the production to get it right. But yeah, it was originally started in a quick session in Auckland and then finished at my place. And it was just one of those loose as short demos where I was like, there's magic in this and I want to, properly develop it because I believe in it. So
yeah, awesome. Cool. Well, should we go through some elements? Maybe starting with like the keys?
Yep. So there's a lot of MIDI in this track, a lot of keys parts. So hang on, let's just go through solo all the keys bits. So we've got those there. Some more keys here. Should really have all these together. Classic. keys. Let's just move all those together, right? All right, so there's a couple of like it took a while to get the there was a lot of layering, as you can kind of see. There was always at least like 2 layers going on to get the exact key sounds as after.
Yeah.
So I've got this like soft pad underneath. And that's just kind of giving you that nice belly, kind of like solid paddy sound underneath the stabby kind of like classic key sound. The Waves version I use because it kind of almost sounds a bit shit, but exactly what I wanted, like just poking out a bit. Yeah, so
were you playing that on like a MIDI keyboard, or did you?
I'd like to say I was. I played the original dumb version, and then I gave it to my friend Leo to map out, and he basically did it way better. So yeah, and then I quite often with Leo or I use other guys, a couple other players as well that will take the MIDI back and then kind of edit the MIDI a bit as well. So, adding notes, taking notes out, leaving notes longer, or taking whole chords out once they've done their pass. So yeah, combination of me playing the very basic version, or even I think in the outro is a sample and then transcribed. So there's a full mixture in the song to get it to where it was.
Yeah.
And then in the verses, it's a bit more deeper. It's like this vibe. It's the Rhodes sitting under there with a serum synth. So this is the synth. But you kind of like, it's, if you'd had the Rhodes by itself, it would sound a little bit pastiche, but you put the synth under there and it just kind of gives it a little bit of modern kind of, or modern essence to it.
Yeah.
A little bit of noise, a little bit of detune. Yeah, so that's that, and then it has a breakdown with another keys bit, which is this glassy synth, which is quite cheap. It's like maybe $100, and it sounds like basically all those Luther Vandross, that classic. What was the keyboard that did it? Was it Casio? Was it a particular workstation synth thing, keys thing that came out that was like the glassy kind of, this one. I mean, you play this bit and you hear the whole, hang on here. I mean, there's a couple of like producers that have been touching on that. 103x. There's just some people that are bringing that back, and I think people needed a big break from that keyboard sound for it to come back. But I think it's such a beautiful sonic, and as long as it's not overused, I think it's a real nice element to the production for me. So yeah, there's a lot of keys, and that electric grand comes back in, and there's some synth plugs, and then there's just the raw piano at the end. Yeah, I mean, what have I got? I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 keys parts for the tune, which is quite a lot, but it's pretty much driven by the key sound of the song.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's put a bit into that. And then we go to the one thing I like about really loved working with Lepani's voice. He's just got such a beautiful amount of air to his vocal.
Yeah.
And when you put that on a Manley mic and then with my vocal chain, it's just so good when you start stacking it. Like if you listen to all these harmonies together.
'Cause you and I will never have tomorrow, so let's stay forever tonight. I believe
it's
our
just
memory.
So lush, like obviously Melodyne's off, so there was one voice in that went out there early, but yeah, it's just such a lush timbre to work with. When you start stacking it, you get those odd singers that almost sound richer and richer the more you stack their vocals.
So what have you got on like the main vocal? What's kind of the vocal?
Okay, let's go to the lead. So I've got them going in. Usually I've changed how I kind of workflow it now, where I'll have because of like DSP issues with some of the plugins, now since doing this session, which was like I said about a year old, I'll run, if these were all these ones, all these leads here, I'd probably run them into a bus and run all the plugins off that bus channel, and just the tuning might be on the Melodyne Auto-Tune, would just be on these individual tracks. But so you can see here, obviously there's Melodyne, the tuning's at the top, that's a given. Put your tuning first. I mean, obviously it's after the output stuff I put it through, but you tuning first before you're processing, because that's how the vocal would have been performed if it was pitched. And then I've used in this one just a low cut. The Manley mic's super sensitive and it picks up everything, and it actually weirdly picks up a lot of sub stuff. I don't know how, but it's just like constantly seems to get like that, this shit around here. Like if you take it off and watch the EQ, and just play this down here. Oh, there we go.
I hear the end of the road.
Look, just sitting all there.
Bring me back to you.
So I just always put that up right at the top, because obviously I don't want any of that sub shit going further down the chain.
Yeah.
And then I really rate. I've got a couple of DSs I use, but I found for a lot of the stuff I work on in Lepani's voice, particular, this Pensado preset on the Waves DS is really good.
Yeah.
and then combine that with soothe, and like quite often it's a different patch and soothe. You're treating different frequencies, but for de-essing, I find the soothe after my compressor is really tasty, and the de-esser first. So everyone's different. Everyone might put their de-esser after they've compressed the vocal, but I like having it first and then compressing that. It used to be the other way around for me, and yeah, I just for some reason like it this way now. And then just I've been really enjoying this EQ, especially if you need to boost the highs. I find like if you need to boost the high mids or the highs, and the drive on it's just really nice, just used really subtly. So, you know, if you're boosting like that classic, like 3-3, where you want to punch the vocal through in the mix a bit more, it's really nice. And it's also like if the vocalist or the mic's a bit dull, it's quite a nice way to put some highs in as well. But with the Manly mic and Lepani's particular timbre, I don't need to boost any of those highs at all. So it's just, yeah, but the side Q is really nice. And then just a little bit of touch of multiband around the low mids. I find that's nicer than just completely notching it out, just compressing it a little bit. Is really nice on the chain. And then a bit of verb on the actual channel, and then obviously a delay on the set as a send. And then this portal plugin, which is quite nice on just doing weird like reverse reverbs and stuff and delays as a send as well, and automating that in and out. So that's the lead vocal chain. And then there's some slight differences, like again, coming back to my thing of how I do workflow now is the session would all be in buses. So I'd have the tuning on these individual ones, and then I'd have these lower plugins on the bus. So the chorus effect, the verb, those EQs at the end, they would all be on the bus. But yeah, like I love using the micro shift for my unisons, just really subtly on the top frequencies. So you start boosting around like, you know, that air area, 8, 10K, and having it kind of halfway and relatively tight, and it just gives you that little bit of extra shine on the air for your unisons and harmonies. But I find once you like get the basics right of a chain with the singer, you pretty much apply the fundamentals to all your layers and dubs, you know, because you'll find that some of the frequencies are bumping out when they hit certain notes, and you want to de-ess it similarly and compress it similarly. You might loosen the compressor off a little bit for certain parts, ad-libs, or, you know, more dynamic sections, but I find the fundamentals are relatively the same.
Yeah.
So once you get that vocal chain dialed in, like we're spending the time trying to get that initial vocal chain right for the lead, you can probably apply a lot of that going forward for your layers.
Yeah. Should we go through maybe like the bass? Sure.
So there's 2 bass parts in here. There's an 808 in the second verse, which is Sublab. I really rate this. You can just got some great 808 presets, and it's very easy to like manipulate ADSR on it and put a sample into it, you know, if you want to chuck a sample in. Or so that's there for the 808. And then this bass is a total throwback bass. It's just the Churia Mini V3.
Yeah.
Real 80s.
Can we just try to find a place?
On that, I've used the UHE compressor. I've found this particular patch is so sick for shorter bass lines, synth bass lines, so not sustaining ones. It's really good for rhythmic ones. And then just again a little bit of multi-band around these low frequencies, just to rein it in so it's not so boomy. And I've been loving this for pretty much most of my basses, if you want them to just feel real level, like between all the different notes, like especially for live bass, when you find like a player or some synths, how the keyboard, the velocities will, with vintage stuff, will change as you go up the key or down the key. And you can treat that in the synth as well. But I find that bass writer is just really solid for just bringing everything. So it's all, every note's hitting kind of solid.
Yeah.
So particularly good for live bass. But I've got that on a synth as well. And then I really like a couple of choruses. This is one of the choruses I really like. And I just chuck that. I mean, I prefer it than the Arturia one that's in the synths and stuff. I like this one better. So it's also quite good if you're using the Roland, the Juno stuff, because as soon as you start using the choruses and those synths, it's got that white noise, which is obviously acknowledging the original vintage synths, but you can't take it off.
Yeah.
Which is super annoying. Like I was like, come on guys, it's like software. just give me the option. So I'll often revert to using a Juno, but then chucking this on, which is basically modeling that, but there's no noise to it. So yeah. Sometimes that noise is nice. It's like a nice, like soft kind of hiss, but also if you want to get rid of it, you're just gonna have to change choruses. So that's the bass. The 808 sounds like this. It's pretty basic. Yeah, a little bit of attack on that, but you don't notice that so much when it's in the mix. Yeah, so that's kind of like all the basses. Obviously, in the bridges.
Lead.
What's that?
That guitar lead you playing?
No, shit, no. That was Lepani. I can't do that kind of stuff. I can do real basic stuff, like if it's like muted guitars or like bar chords. But that's the limits of my abilities on guitar. Usually, I've got some really good session people I use for guitar. That can play stuff down. I mean, I really reckon that's the key to being a great producer, is knowing when there's someone that can execute an idea way better than yourself and bringing them in. Whether it's a co-producer to finish the song, or whether it's like a guitarist, so you might get a drummer to play a drum part so you can get the right hats feel. The better you are at realizing something can be done better and using that to your strength is what makes, I think, a really, really good producer.
I feel like that's our tip of the interview right there, knowing your strengths.
Yep, knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses. And I think it's a strength, to be honest, knowing your weaknesses. Like being honest with yourself and going, this can be better. Like, I'm not out here to do everything myself on the record. At the end of the day, if you're the lead producer on a song, you're making decisions, and you've got to make the best decisions for the song or the track. So I mean, the bridge is like going for that classic, more modern feel. I've just used an old break and filtered it, low passed it, and then leading it to that final chorus and then that outro, which is more organic.
Yeah. What about the drums? What's going on there?
There's not a lot of layers to it. Here's the drum elements in the chorus. Play it down. So there's like a couple of verbs, short-plated verbs, claps. Everything's going into that bus. It's pretty basic. There's not even any, like, listening to that, there's not even any hats in the song. It's very much big kick and snare, classic 80s, and played probably like a power ballad rhythm. Very simple, a lot of space.
Yeah, super powerful though.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny listening to it because it's so old. Like, I did the song quite a while ago. I mean, I don't know if I would have done it differently, but like, I was like, oh, maybe I could have potentially done the drums a little differently. Now, like, it's funny how you always finding new tricks or changing your just certain nuances in your production. And you must know, like, visiting some of those songs you wrote like a couple of years ago, you'd produce them really different now. I mean, there's hardly any productions I listen to that I'm like, oh yeah, I'd leave that as is. I feel like I'm always changing and adapting and learning. So it's kind of awesome, but also kind of annoying, because you're just like, fuck, I could have done that better.
Would you ever go back and reproduce stuff you've done? Kind of like how Taylor Swift's had to go back and redo some of her albums. Would you ever do that?
Maybe. I prefer just to start something new. I mean, if it's a song I really, really love and can hear it like being something transformative and transcendent with it, if the song's great and I'm like, I could really produce that in a really unique way, that would be amazing for that song. And I'd probably maybe have a look at it if I had the time, but I just love starting new stuff. I don't know if I could really go back for a whole project and do that.
Yeah.
It's too exciting starting new stuff,
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Well, thanks for showing us the track. That was awesome.